let's get started on today's webinar on claiming the 2021 expanded tax credit. I'm Deborah Stein, and my colleague Alina De Fonseca is presenting with me. Next slide, please. This is a joint project between the Coalition of Human Needs and the Partnership for America's Children. The Coalition on Human Needs is an alliance of national groups, service providers, faith groups, policy experts, labor, civil rights, all of whom care about meeting the needs of people with low incomes and increasing the knowledge of positive outcomes from current or proposed programs. My organization, the Partnership for America's Children, has over 50 members, which are multi-issue child advocacy organizations in 40 states. Our Florida member is the Campaign for America's Children, which used to be the Campaign for Florida's Children, and they are co-sponsoring this event, and we're very grateful for that. We're presenting in Florida because we believe that a very high number of children in Florida that are eligible for this credit will only receive it if their families file a tax return, and that's an unusually high number, and we want to help those families get the money that is legitimately theirs. Next slide, please. I run the partnership, as I said. I've got more than 35 years of experience in policy analysis and advocacy on behalf of children. And for the last 7 years, I've been running the partnership, which supports multi-issue child advocacy organizations around the country. Next slide, please. My colleague Alini from the Coalition on Human Needs is our child tax credit outreach coordinator, or one or two of them. And she's been working with us to help launch this project. Before that, she worked in New York City, helping public housing residents, and then with services for the aging. Next slide, please. So let's start by talking about what the expanded child tax credit is. We've had a child tax credit for years, but in 2021, they expanded the child tax credit for 1 year. And that expanded tax credit is such a big expansion that if the families that are entitled to it get it, it'll cut the number of children in poverty by about 40%. And at least as important, it can lift over 1 million children out of deep poverty. So it can lift them over half the poverty line. They'll still be in poverty, but they will be much less poor. The important thing for you to know is that as organizations that serve families with children, you can help families claim that full credit. It is an easy thing for you to do with the materials we've created. You don't need to be a tax expert. You just need to make sure that they know that they're eligible and where to get a tax credit, where to get help filing for the tax credit. Next slide, please. So what exactly happened when they expanded the credit? First of all, you probably saw that lots of families were just getting it automatically. Families were eligible to get half of the tax credit in 2021 and the second half when they filed this year. But anyone who didn't get the first half in 2021 can get the full credit if they file for taxes this year. So the part about paying it in advance, that was part of the expansion. The second part is that they almost doubled the amount of the credit per child. So it used to be $2,000 per child. Now it is $3,600 for children under 6 and $3,000 for children aged 6 through 17. The third part of the expansion is that there's no minimum income requirement. So even with families that have no earned income can get it. Those might be families who are living on Social Security, disability benefits, or old age Social Security and raising grandchildren, or perhaps families that just were unemployed throughout the pandemic and couldn't work. And as a companion to that, it's what we call fully refundable. That means if I don't have a penny in earnings and I file a tax return, the full amount of the credit will be paid to me, refunded to me, even though I don't pay any taxes. Next slide, please. So those are 3 ways it got expanded. It means an awful lot of money. Imagine a family with 1 4-year-old and 2 older children. For the 2021 child tax credit, just for that, they'll get nearly $10,000. In addition, they might get the stimulus payment that they had not received already. Most families that got the stimulus payment will automatically get the child tax credit. So if a family hasn't claimed their stimulus payment already, when they claim the child tax credit, they'll get it. Or if they had some earnings, they might get the earned income tax credit. It's pretty easy for a family with 3 children to end up making close to $20,000 and more than doubling their family income. It is an enormous amount of money that can make a significant change in these families' lives. Next slide, please. But as I said, 4 million or more children are at risk of missing out on the child tax credit because they're not typically required to file taxes, and they didn't refile in 2019 or 2020, and they didn't claim their economic stimulus payment. The result is that the IRS doesn't know who they are, where they live, or that they have young children in their households. And so they didn't automatically send them the credit. These families have to do something. Specifically, they have to file a tax return in order to get the credit. It's also really important to understand that Black and Latinx kids were always disproportionately excluded from the full child tax credit, or at least didn't benefit from it, and they're even more likely to miss out on it now. So it's one way to address issues around equity is to help these families claim the credit that they're entitled to. Our research, and we'll talk a little bit about it later, shows that families trust community organizations to give them advice around the child tax credit, and that you can help them figure out how to claim it. You don't have to understand the tax law. You don't have to be a tax expert. You don't have to give them tax advice. You have to tell them that they could be eligible and tell them how to find a free tax service to file their taxes for them. Next slide, please. So how do families do this? Next slide. First of all, in that household, the adult does not necessarily have to have a social security number. They can either have a social security number or something called an ITIN, an individual taxpayer identification number, which is what people who are in the United States but don't have authority to work have. However, the children must have social security numbers. That's very common in a family where the adult might be an immigrant without documentation, but the child was born here. The child that they're claiming the credit for must be the child of the adult, or their grandchild, their stepchild, or it could be a younger sibling of the adult, or a step sibling, or a half sibling, or their descendant. So they have to have this particular set of relationships, or it could be a foster child placed by a government agency. They also have to have lived with the adult in the United States for more than half the year, and they can't have been supporting themselves. At least half their support has to have come from the adult. Next slide, please. As we said, most families automatically got advance payments from July through December of last year, but if the IRS didn't know about them, they had to claim the credit, and there was an online portal they could do that with. So some of those families did in fact claim the credit. But whether they already got part of the credit or not, everybody has to file a tax return this year to get the second half of the credit, and anyone who didn't get the part of the credit already can get the full credit by filing their tax return. Our research with families, though, shows that families don't understand that they might be eligible, particularly if they weren't eligible in past years, and they don't know how to get help filing their tax return to get the credit. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about the timeline, because when we talk about taxes, people tend to assume that you can only deal with your taxes between now and April 18th. But in fact, this is something that you can try and support families in claiming throughout all of 2022. The tax season began a little over a month ago, and that's when volunteer income tax assistance sites opened, or VITA sites. Those sites provide free tax filing assistance to people who are low income. And they have trained volunteers. There's also very similar sites that are run by AARP. And so there are different ways to help families get help filing their taxes. People who made enough money to be required to file taxes either have to file by April 18th, or they have to ask for an extension by April 18th. But if people made too little money to be required to file taxes, they can file at any time in 2018. And frankly, The people we're talking about are not, they don't owe taxes, they're going to do a refund. So even if they forget to ask for an extension, they aren't going to pay a penalty. They can just file late and get their refund later. So while April 18th is tax day, people can keep filing their tax returns and getting their child tax credit later. Right now, in order to get the credit, they have to file a full tax return, which they can do online or in paper. But starting probably in May, there will be what we call a simplified online filing portal at a website that will be getctc.org. And that works for people who are not legally required to file taxes. So they don't have to file all the documentation most people do when they file their taxes. They can just put in sort of the bare minimum and get their credit and probably their third economic stimulus payment too. That portal will be open from May until late fall of 2022, October or November. So we are asking you to try and help families connect with Vita sites right now and start filing for their credits right now, but we can keep doing this work all the way through 2022. Next slide, please. So how do you help families find a Vita site? You can go to getyourrefund.org, which is available in English or Spanish, and has a set of Vita sites listed there. People shouldn't just show up. They should call the Vita site and make an appointment. They can probably call 211 and learn where a Vita site is near them. The other thing to know is once they've made an appointment to go to the Vita site, or before they've even made the appointment, they need to both go to the appointment. And so they want to make sure they make an appointment for a time when they can both go, for married people, because they're both going to have to sign that return and sign the authorities. So that's the first way. You can just help people find a Vita site. But there are other options. Also through getyourrefund.org, people who are comfortable going online and using an electronic filing system, much like the filing software that you can buy, but for free, they can do that at getyourrefund.org. And when they run into problems, there's a chat function that will help them understand how to fill it out correctly. So that's option one, is to do it themselves using free tax software at getyourrefund.org. The second option is they can do it online, but working with a live person, uploading their documents so a live person can look at them and give them advice. And the third option is that they can, if they don't want to file a full return, if they didn't make enough money to be required to file their taxes, they can just sign up to be notified when getctc.org opens up in May. So getyourrefund.org offers all these options, and it will also help people decide which option is best for them. So truly all you need to do is get people to go to getyourrefund.org and figure out what is going to work best for them to file their taxes. Next slide, please. Some other locations, as I said, may have other free tax assistance. Law school clinics sometimes do it. AARP often does. We've got the link here for you. And as I said earlier, everybody will get the slides and the recording, so you'll have the link. And then for people who have tax problems or tax disputes, there's a separate service called low income taxpayer clinics. And for example, if someone claims the child tax credit and the IRS says, no, someone else already claimed that child on their tax return, these low income taxpayer clinics can help people resolve those disputes. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, as valuable as these free tax assistance services are, and as many as there are, some people may not be able to get an appointment with them because we think there may be a real, they're always pretty crowded, and there may be even more demand this year with the child tax credit, and also we're not sure what the pandemic may have done to the number of volunteers. Families may decide that it is worth using paid tax preparer services because they'll get so much money back. And that may in fact make sense. If they decide to do that, we strongly encourage you to steer them to the link that we've got on this page, which helps them identify a reputable tax preparer. There's a lot of people out there who will do a competent job. It'll cost them money that we wish was going into their own pockets. but there's some out there that are not competent or even fraudulent. And so you really want to make sure that they pick a competent tax preparer and not just someone they know, maybe someone who speaks their language. The free tax services, in fact, should have translating services, and they're better off getting somebody who's reputable and trustworthy. Next slide, please. So for the families who do not have Social Security numbers for the adults, some of them will already have that ITIN number I talked about. But if they don't have an ITIN, they need to submit a Form W-7 along with a bunch of documents. Nobody wants to send their important papers into the IRS. So typically what people do is they go to IRS taxpayer assistance centers, which will take copies of their official documents, look at the official documents, certify the copies, and then the official documents never leave the possession of the person. And so we've also given you the link for where they do that. And then once they've prepared this Form W-7 and it's ready to go, they also have to mail in a paper tax return. That's going to take a while to get a response. The IRS is really backed up. But even if it takes several months, and it could well take several months, at the end of it, they're going to get a significant amount of money, and it's worth going through. Next slide, please. So what documents do they need? Well, I'm not going to walk you through them all right now, but we've given you a list that tells you everything that they should bring to the tax appointment. Next slide, please. There's one document that people may find particularly confusing that is being used this year, that's new this year, actually. It's called a 6419 letter. And those were mailed to everybody that the IRS believes already got part of their child tax credit. There are a couple of reasons why that letter may be a problem for people, and I just want to make sure you understand them. One is that it may not match what the family thinks they got. And that might be because the IRS mailed a check, but it got returned, or the family had moved and the check just got thrown out at the old address, who knows. If the family thinks that the amount on the IRS letter is wrong, they can go to their IRS online account and get a more up-to-date amount from the IRS and use that when they file their tax return. The other thing that families should know is that if the family is a married couple, they're each going to get a 6419 letter for half the amount. And so those are not duplicate letters. They need both, and they need to bring both to their tax preparer. But it's not as big a problem as you might think, because they can always use that number that's on their IRS online account instead of the 6419 letter. Next slide, please. So I'm now going to turn this over to my colleague, Alini. Alini is going to talk to you about what we have learned about why families haven't claimed their child tax credit. Remember, these are families that also didn't claim their economic stimulus payment, and they certainly knew that that money was being paid out. It got enormous amounts of attention. So there are some pretty real barriers that stop people from claiming their economic stimulus payment that also get in the way of claiming the child tax credit. That's where you come in. They trust you. You can explain to them that, in fact, they are eligible, and we want you to know what they're concerned about and what you need to tell them to go get help filing their taxes. Alini?
Great. Thank you, Deb. Okay, so first, as Deb mentioned, we'll go over some common barriers and concerns. And let me just move this. And these are lessons that and information that we got from a series of focus groups we conducted in fall of 2021 with non-filers. And this is some of the responses we received back around what their concerns or questions or misunderstanding or misconceptions of the expanded CTC were. And this included that they responded well to language emphasizing the help CTC provided for the whole entire family. They did not respond well to findings about long-term benefits to children. They were cautious about overpromising. So things around, ending child poverty, things like that. It wasn't necessarily as big of a response as it was to the help that the CTC could provide for the entire family. Also, just not realizing that the CTC was expanded, and that people who weren't eligible in the past are now are eligible. Believing that they had to work to receive the credit. Deb went over that earlier. Fear of having to pay the IRS back if not entitled to the credit. Fear that they'll owe back taxes. Fear because they owe back taxes. Fear that they will lose other benefits such as SNAP, Medicaid, things like that. There were immigration concerns, language barriers, access concerns, questions around claiming a child born in 2021, children born in 2021 couldn't be claimed on the simplified portal, but now can be done so via tax returns. And difficulty getting through to the IRS if they have a question. And also, as Deb mentioned, a desire for in-person help. So covering one of the first questions coming up, or one of the concerns is, does receiving the CTC impact other public benefits? And the answer to that is no. Getting this credit will not change any federally funded public benefits that a family receives, like such as Social Security, SNAP, childcare subsidies, or WIC. The CTC is not a loan. So this is in regards to, will an individual ever have to pay this money back? So the CTC is not a loan. If someone receives payments for a child who is no longer their dependent, they may have to pay that money back. There are some protections for those with incomes below 40,000, 50,000 for heads of households, or 60,000 for a married couple. And there are more limited protections for those with incomes below 80,000. So that's individuals or non-custodial parents, 100,000 for single head of household, or 120,000 for couples filing jointly. And what if someone has not filed tax returns in the past? So people with very low incomes, that's under 18,800 for the head of household, or 25,100 for married filing jointly, are generally not required to file. If they were required to file, generally there's not a penalty if the IRS owes someone a refund, perhaps from the EITC. And taxpayers can file for the past 3 years to receive the refunds they are owed. Additionally, if someone owes child support or taxes, claiming the CTC can benefit them in the sense that the credit will go towards paying off that outstanding child support or taxes first. And if there's anything left over from the CTC, they'll receive the difference. If it all goes toward paying what is owed, that will reduce their debt. It means they'll be able to get the tax credits in future years. And will receiving the CTC affect someone's immigration status or ability to get a green card? The answer to that is no. So under current law, receiving the CTC or other tax credits will not affect a person's immigration status, their ability to get a green card, or their future immigration plans. So use of tax credits is not considered in a public charge determination for U.S. citizenship and immigration services. We also advise that for those particular cases, if there's any more stipulations or nuances to a person's particular case, that they be referred to an immigration attorney that can help them discern exactly what applies to them. And will the IRS share someone's immigration status with other government agencies? The answer to that is also no. The IRS is forbidden to share an individual's tax information with other agencies. There are limited exceptions related to certain criminal investigations or to determine someone's tax liability. Again, we suggest for those sorts of something like that were to come up, our suggestion is to see the IRS website or speak with a tax expert for a particular case. And these questions and a number of other questions can be found in our resource toolkit, especially the FAQ. There's a number of different questions there that address these common concerns. And this link will be shared in our follow-up email. And I actually can quickly show you what our toolkit looks like. This is the toolkit as it stands for national, state, and community partners. And as you can see, there's a number of different resources. We have outreach materials. We're going to go over that in just a second. We have materials in red are also available in Spanish, and materials with the little globe next to them means that they're available in multiple languages. We have resources for immigrant families here. We have best practices and lessons learned for child tax credit outreach here as well. We have resources that can be helpful, including the Get Your Refund links, as well as the documents you need to file, and information from the low income taxpayer clinics resources. And we just recently also added tax filing resources for foster youth. Okay. Okay. And then I want to speak a little bit as well about outreach and some of the best practices that we have compiled, as well as from our partner agencies that are also out there doing this work. So in terms of CTC outreach, what works? Outreach that is integrated into existing programs and communications have been found to have a lot of success. Additionally, families who receive multilingual information multiple times are more likely to respond or act on the information. Outreach must also include clear referral info with different options for how people can ask questions or get tax prep assistance. And broad communication is most effective when paired with targeted outreach or follow-up. So communication with high volume of families, but also connecting more deeply with those at risk of missing out on the CTC. And school districts and government benefit agencies are among the most trusted sources of information for families. We also found that text messages, for example, from schools or agencies have been especially effective, although robocalls, emails, and mailers can also be effective. And in addition to hearing from trusted community messengers, families may need to hear from tax experts or immigration or family law experts as well. And there are two different levels of outreach that we've identified that are effective around the CTC. Level 1 outreach is centered around raising awareness, and level 2 outreach activities are deeper engagement directly with families. Here's an example of the level 1 outreach options. So sending text messages, robocalls, or emails. So texts have proven to be especially effective, but it's helpful to communicate to families through a combination of messages. And so these are just two sample text messages from Center for Budget and Policy Priorities. These examples are in their toolkit, which is also linked within our toolkit. So if anyone is interested in using these scripts, they'll be available through those resources. Also recording a phone hold message or video message for a waiting room or office screens to share outreach messages can also be very impactful. This is a sample, another sample hold message from Center for Budget and Policy Priorities. As well as hanging posters in waiting rooms and other public spaces. Or we know that organizations generally tend to do this anyway to share information with clients and communities. So same applies around the CTC. Here are two example flyers that are also available in our toolkit. One is from GMMB, the other one is from CBPP. Additionally, just distributing flyers in general, sending flyers home in backpacks can also be a great way to raise awareness. And adding CTC related questions to existing intake forms. So by providing intake workers with local VITA numbers or flyers that they can then give to families who may be eligible. So then along with being able to tell families that this is an option for them, already giving them a direct path of where to go to get additional information or help in filing and getting their child tax credits. And adding flyers and FAQs to resources that are already going out to families can also be a great way to increase awareness. And this is a screenshot of our FAQ also included in our toolkits that answers a number of different questions around the CTC. And where partners have relationships with state and local benefit agencies or school districts, being able, if you're able to, encouraging them to send out mass communications to their beneficiaries and families about the CTC, where they can get help, as we mentioned before. These are benefit agencies and school districts are trusted messengers and can be really helpful in increasing awareness. And sending out messages in a regular newsletter or posts on social media. Here are some different social media posts, sample social media posts from other partners and toolkits that have been used in the past. And when it comes to level 2 outreach activities, some of the things we're talking about and recommending, suggesting include holding phone bank or conducting peer-to-peer texting. Also, where it's possible, hosting a Q&A with tax specialists, immigration attorney, or other subject matter experts, where community members, family members can ask their questions directly to experts that they also trust. And as we know, you can hold these in person where possible, via Zoom or on Facebook Live, among other options. Also helping families schedule VITA appointments. Again, the ability to not just share the information with families, but then be able to connect them directly to somewhere they can go and follow through and complete the steps and apply for or complete their tax returns can be really helpful in guiding families along the way to get the tax credit. Also working in collaboration with local tax sites and partners to make tax prep services accessible. So helping to coordinate language interpretation, childcare during appointments, transportation, tax sites, things like that. And where possible, organize tax filing or document preparation events. Being able to work with VITA volunteers, local universities, or other tax specialists, volunteers to host tax prep events, or to help families prepare necessary documents before VITA appointments can be really helpful. And we went through the toolkit a little bit already, but here again is a list of all the different kinds of resources that we have in there. Again, this will be shared in our follow-up email, and I'll also put this link in the chat when we're finished. But a number of different resources there, and the resources are continually growing, and we're adding and updating as new information and resources come in as well. And if you're interested, you can sign up for our child tax credit email list. We use this listserv to send any additional trainings that we have going on that are open to the public for people to join. Updates to our toolkits or new resources, and any other updates around the child tax credit to keep community informed and up to date on everything that's going on. Additionally, if you're interested, you can email me directly in getting assistance in getting a unique URL specifically for your organization from Get Your Refund. And this can help track which outreach activities and communications are most effective. Also, anyone who has any interest in additional collaborations or work with us or getting more resources, we're happy to partner with anyone who would like to do so. So please feel free to reach out. And I think at this point as well, Zoe is going to pop in a poll in the Q&A section yes, there it is, to fill out so we can get a clear idea on what's useful, what's helpful as we continue to do this outreach. And we'll open up to Q&A now.
Yeah, so we would appreciate it. I hope if you can't see people must be able to see the poll now. If you could respond to the poll, that would really help us know what you're planning on doing and what you need from us. So we'll just give you a couple of minutes to respond, a couple of moments. It shouldn't take that long. Looks like there's a few people who haven't responded, and there are 2 poll questions. It looks like people did. respond to the second one. So if everyone has responded now, I don't know if you can see the results. Zoe, can you share the results so that people can see them? So thank you all. I'm really pleased to see that a number of you either have been doing this already or are considering it now. And it looks like among the materials that we've offered, the social media posts and the newsletters and the flyers are some of the most helpful information. What I would like to do now is ask you to put two things in the chat for us. The first one is, are there other resources that you would use? Actually, I'm not sure if the results got shared. Let me try that now. Are there other resources that you would like to get that are not in there that would make it easy for you to do outreach? And the second question that I'd love to have answers for in the chat is whether you would find it helpful to have a one-on-one appointment with Alini or her colleague Julia to figure out how to handle outreach, or maybe if you're the representative of your organization here, but you have a big organization with a lot of outlets in Florida, whether you'd want them to appear on a webinar so that all of your staff knows how to do this. Whatever might be helpful, we're really eager to get families this money because, as you can see, it's an enormous amount of money for a low-income family, and we want to get them all the help we can. So if you could pop in the chat both what else might be useful for you and whether you'd like to connect with Alini. And Alini has put in the chat also the link to the toolkit with all of the resources that she just walked you through. We did have a question in the Q&A, and I tried to answer it there, but I do want to mention it again here because it has come up a lot while people are thinking about other questions they might have in the chat. I'll walk you guys through this. One thing that happens frequently, unfortunately, is that a parent or a caregiver who's eligible for the child tax credit and who actually had the child live with them for more than 6 months, and therefore is the person who should be able to claim that child, will file their tax return, and then the IRS will say someone else already claimed that child. And that's obviously, that may be tax fraud in some cases. In other cases, it's a simple confusion about who's eligible. They may assume, for example, that because they're the legal parent, that they're entitled to it, even though they may not realize that, say, the grandma's entitled to it because the child is living with the grandma. In either case, the caregiver who had the child for more than 6 months can go ahead and file a tax return and claim the child if they haven't already, if they just happen to know that the child was claimed. Or if the IRS says someone else claimed the child, there is a process for resolving that dispute. And the IRS will ask for documentation that shows who the child lived with for more than 6 months. And you can tell families that they can go ahead and try and get the child tax credit. I will tell you, though, that we did focus groups with caregivers, or one set of focus groups with caregivers who were not the parents. And what we found was that in many cases, the caregivers are unwilling to take that step because it's more important for them to stay on good terms with the parent. Sometimes they said things like, yeah, the parent got the child tax credit refund, but then they spent it on the child, or the parent will use that refund to set up an apartment. They don't have the money for a security deposit. This will give it to them. Then the child can go back and live with them. I think that's the best thing for the child in the long run. Or sometimes they're afraid that if the only way the parent can get the child tax credit is by taking custody of the kids, the parent will try and get the kids back, even if that's not the best thing for the kid. So we found a lot of reluctance among caregivers to claim the credit even when they were entitled to have it. And that, of course, is their call, their choice. But you can certainly let them know that if they want the credit and there is a dispute resolution process, it will take some time, it will take some months probably, but they can ultimately get that dispute resolved and get the credit themselves if they can show that the child lived with them for more than 6 months. I'm not seeing any other questions. So I hope this was helpful to all of you. I'm going to ask you to put one more thing in the chat, if you would. Those of you who are planning to do some outreach or who have done it already, can you give us a rough sense of how many families you might be working with? Like, are you running one child care center or a network so that you might have, I don't know, 10 families or 100 families that might get your information? We'd love to get a sense of how many people you have the ability to reach. And if you could just pop that in the chat, if you want to, you can just send it to, you don't have to send it to everybody, you can just send it to the hosts and panelists. But we'd love to get a sense of how many families you're trying to reach. And again, I'll give you some time to do that. All right, I'm going to give people just a minute more to pop their notes in the chat if they want to. We appreciate those of you who put it in there. And we really encourage you to reach out to us if you need more information. Alini will get you the recording and the slide deck. And we hope that this helps the families you work with. Have a great day. We're going to turn off the recording now.